So hello everyone. Welcome to the weekly Dharma Gathering. My name is Alex Van Gils and I'm one of the hosts of Weekly Dharma Gathering. Tonight's session will be led by Dr. Hun Lai and is titled Between the Four Noble Rumors and Four Noble Truths. Dr. Lai will lead us through a guided meditation, Dharma talk, and will close with a question and answer discussion. Tonight's session will be recorded, so if you'd prefer not to be seen, please turn off your camera feature. Please note that you will also be recorded when asking a question. The recording of tonight's gathering can be accessed within 48 hours via your purchased products on your Vimeo Weekly Dharma Gathering account, and you'll receive an email notification once it's posted. Dr. Hun Lai is a Dorje Lopan, or Vajra master, in the Drikung Kagyu lineage of Tibetan Buddhism, and earned a PhD in religious studies from the University of Virginia. Dr. Lai divides his time between serving His Holiness the Drikung Kyabgon Rinpoche as a special assistant in projects in Asia and the Americas, as the spiritual director of Urban Dharma North Carolina, where he is the founder and spiritual director, and as a Dharma teacher to various communities worldwide. So without further ado, I'd like to thank you all for being here and welcome Dr. Hun Lai.
Can you hear? Yes?
Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm glad to be able to do this. Right before this, I was talking to Alex about how we had to postpone this a couple of times due to some sudden changes in my schedule, but I'm glad to be able to do this. So let's see. So let's start with a guided meditation. As I'm sure you all know, there are so many different types of meditation that we find within the Buddhist tradition and beyond the Buddhist tradition. And the word meditation can mean so many things to so many people. So I'm going to very briefly mention two words and give two definitions to these two words. One word is meditation, and then another word is mindfulness, meditation and mindfulness. So with the word meditation, I'm going to go in the direction of how Tibetans translate what's bhavana in Sanskrit. Is translated into Tibetan as gompa, and which is then translated into English as meditate. But there's a very famous saying that is often repeated in these Tibetan instructions of meditation, which is actually a quote from the founder of the lineage that I'm a part of, which is one of the Kagyu lineages called Drikung Kagyu. And there the founder, Kyopa Jidin Sumgön, who lived in the 12th century, he famously put it in a very kind of pithy way. He says, Gompa Mayin, Gompa Yin. So Gompa Mayin, Gompa Yin, if you translate literally, it is meditation is not meditation. Meditation is getting used to. So he says, when we say meditation, so even in his time, in the 12th century, there was already, I think, the sense of like meditation being something very exotic, something very mysterious. But he says it's simply the process of habituating, the process of getting used to. So from that perspective, all of us are very experienced and, in fact, maybe great meditators. Except that what we have habituated right now, what we have gotten used to is suffering and the causes of suffering. We have habituated suffering and the causes of suffering, but not actually recognizing the true identity of this suffering and the causes of suffering, or dukkha and the causes of dukkha, which is what we'll talk about later. Right? We have habituated that. But we have habituated it in such a way that it never feels right. Yeah. So this kind of habituation that we are so expert at right now, you could say confused habituation. No matter how well we habituate it, it doesn't feel right. We feel like something is just wrong. Something is just off. And that's because we say, it's not our nature. And if it is not our nature, no matter how dedicated we are to try to habituate that, it will never feel right. So then, when we engage in Buddhist meditation, we are doing the same thing. We're habituating, we're getting used to, but we are getting used to and we're habituating the way things are. In a more fancy expression, perhaps in later Buddhist tradition, in early Buddhist traditions, they say, the way things are. Later, you have like phrases like the natural state, the innate state, right? The fundamental goodness, and so on and so forth. They're all talking about the same thing. Yeah? So now when we're talking about meditation, we're talking about habituating or getting used to that which, I would put it as that which is. Yeah? Habituating what is. And to see clearly what is. So that's first word. Second word, mindfulness. So mindfulness in Pali, one of the early canonical languages, is, maybe you already know this, is sati. Sati, in its most basic and perhaps sometimes even mundane sense of the word, it simply means not forgetting. To remember, to not forget, to remember, to not forget. In its most basic kind of pedestrian use of that word, way, way back when people were speaking this language on a day-to-day basis, is used as simply the word means not to forget, to remember, right? But many places in the early text when the Buddha talks about sati, which we translate as mindfulness, in fact, I believe the English word we have now, mindfulness, didn't really become a word until somebody was translating these texts, decided to add a ness to what have been until this point a verb, mindful. Yes, then somebody added ness to it, and now we have this word mindfulness, right? But in many places in the early text, when the Buddha talks about sati, three qualities of mind are often highlighted. Yeah? Three qualities of the mind are often highlighted. And I think it is good for us to quickly understand, what are these three qualities, right? The three qualities that are highlighted, the first one, is the one closest to what we've been talking about, like having attention, being present. So you could say heedful. You are heedful, so attention is present. So alert, present. Yeah, so heedful is the first. Second quality is with interest, ardent, with interest. And third quality is resolute, which is, you could say, sort of like related to how to remain in this state of sati and not getting distracted. Yeah? So sati has often comes with these three qualities, like the three legs of a tripod. It's not one simple just to remember. It's whenever the Buddha expanded on sati, you find consistently these three qualities mentioned. Heedful, which is the not forgetting part, right? Ardent, or with interest. So not like a kind of passive observing of something, but that you should have an interest in what you're observing. Even might I say, curiosity about what is being observed. Then the third one is resolute or resolve. That you're resolved not to, like, get kind of distracted or dragged away by something else. So these are the three. Yeah. So just some kind of sprinklings of certain ideas that I think is helpful. Yeah. So now we're going to do a very short guided meditation. And in this guided meditation, I want to focus on sati. So this meditation, this getting used to, will develop sati. And think of sati with the three qualities as like a flashlight. So you are putting together, rather than going to the store and just buying a flashlight. You have downloaded the instructions, you have bought the materials. Now you're going to build this flashlight. And then when you build this flashlight, you're going to take this flashlight and shine it on something. And what we're going to shine it on is this thing that we call the body. What we have here that we call the body, right? So this is what we're going to shine it on. And so the Buddha said, in this body, from head to toes, in a poetic way, he says, this fathom-long body, from head to toe, right here is where bondage and liberation is experienced, is found. Right here. You don't need to go anywhere else. If you know how to look, if you know how to observe, if you can shine the light of sati onto this body, then liberation is found. And when we are bound, when we're in bondage, it's also in relation to this body. So we're going to do a very short guided meditation on this body, okay? Okay, so let's start. So first, I'm going to invite you to approach this meditation with an attitude of simply allowing your body and mind to settle and to settle into their own places. Trusting that both body and mind, if we get out of the way, if we drop our agendas, if we drop our fears, if we drop our concepts, our theories, if we would simply just get out of the way, both body and mind will naturally settle and find their own places of ease and openness, their own natural places. So we approach this with a trust in the innate wisdom of both body and mind, a wisdom that can shine forth if we could only get out of the way. So let your body and mind settle. Perhaps you can begin with letting your body settle. Two main points to pay attention to. One, you want to sit in a way that is stable, comfortable, balanced, and not putting pressure or stress in a particular part because you're not sitting in a balanced way. Perhaps you're leaning towards one side or the other. So slowly, softly, just scan your body to make sure that it is indeed in a balanced place, stable, comfortable. That's the first point. The second point is you want the body to be upright, not leaning to the front or falling behind or hunch over. So at your own pace, perhaps pull your spine upwards. Hold it for a little bit. Then allow that to just settle back down. And you can do that a few times. And then after that, at your own pace, simply let your body find its own place of rest and ease. And let your body settle into its own place. As your body settles into its own place, trust that your mind will also settle into its own place. Simply allow your mind to rest, to be at ease. And sometimes that means letting your mind pervade your entire body. As the body finds its own place of rest, the mind can ease itself completely into the body. And just that is enough. Sometimes you might find the mind to be too busy, in which case you work with that busyness. You draw the attention of that busyness. But with minimal force, or no force at all, simply try to draw the mind's interest and attention. So perhaps you can consider contemplating the nature of your mind, the behavior of your mind, to be akin a pond in the middle of a forest that is quiet, and right in the middle of this forest is a pond. This pond is still and quiet, but from time to time, maybe a leaf falls onto the surface of this pond and a ripple is created. As that ripple is created, it goes outwards, outwards, outwards. And those ripples dissolve back into the pond. And then perhaps a dragonfly lands on the surface, and yet creating another ripple. And let this ripple spread outwards and outwards and outwards and outwards. And in this manner, the mind finds its place of rest and ease. At your own pace, whenever you feel ready to add this or to move to the next step. In the next step, we want to develop sati by relying on our breath, or rather on the process of breathing. Relate to this breath, relate to this object of sati by understanding that the breath that we are talking about, the breathing that we're talking about, is fundamentally a property of the body. We're not talking about oxygen. We're not talking about the air that is drawn into the body and then back out through the nostril or the mouth. We're not talking about that. But rather we're talking about the process of breathing in and out. Or rather of breath arising and ceasing as a property of the body. So turn your attention to how breath is something that arises from the center of your body. As you inhale, feel your body filling up, expanding outwards, and expanding outwards and outwards, until that breath, which began as such a welcome moment and moments of inhalation, at a certain point turns uncomfortable. And right there, you begin to exhale. Breath begins to cease. As it ceases back into the body. And you can feel your body in a subtle way collapsing back inside and inside. And again, the relief that comes from exhaling, the sensation of release and relief as you exhale and exhale and exhale. And then pay attention to that point physically. When the exhalation becomes uncomfortable and then takes another turn where you inhale and the body arises, expands outwards as the next breath arises from within the body, followed by the next breath ceasing within the body, and so on and so forth. Don't try to control your breath, but don't become disengaged from it. And instead approach it with curiosity or ardency, resolute, making the resolve on not being distracted, and coming back again and again, following the rising and the ceasing of breath within this body. When the breath is smooth, know that it is smooth. When the breath is rough, know that it is rough. When it's arising, know that it is arising. When it's ceasing, know that it is ceasing. When it is long, know that it is long. When it is short, know that it is short. But always also with an eye towards what are the bodily experience of this long breath or short breath, a smooth inhalation or a rough exhalation. Coming back again and again to breath as a property of the body. As the one essential quality that the body needs. But yet completely ignored, completely not seeing this rising and ceasing. So we turn this flashlight of sati onto breath as the fundamental property of this body. Yeah, so that was just a very short session. And I wonder if maybe if we want to have a very short, maybe, discussion about what just happened, in case there's a need for that.
So I've set it so that anyone can unmute their mics now if they'd like to ask a question or say anything to Dr. Lai. Also, you can chat in the chat box.
Dr. Lai, hi,
Yes.
I'm Anne.
Hi.
Hi, so as I was following your guidance, I wondered, I was aware of my surroundings, but not allowing them to distract me. But I wanted to hear a little more about our relationship with our surroundings when we're meditating.
Sure, sure. I use the example, I think, of like, you know, sometimes, you know, I don't know what your relationship, you know, to driving is. For some people,
yeah.
oh, good.
I drive.
For some people, it's extremely stressful at all times, right, when they drive. But try to imagine, you know, the times where you have gotten into the car and you're driving, and everything feels right, you know, like you're not in a rush, right? You're going somewhere that you're not dreading, right? You're not in a rush. You're not trying to do a whole bunch of things, you know, which I'm sure you do not text while you drive, or, you know, try to. So it's meditation, you know, when it's done right, or at least the way I like to emphasize. So there are types of meditation where your mind kind of zooms into a state of absorption, right? Where everything else kind of is gone, not there anymore. And definitely the Buddha did teach forms of meditation that goes in that route. And for that, right, you could say certain muscles, so to say, are being built and developed with that type of meditation. Here, there's another type of meditation or cluster of meditations whereby absorption and the muscles involved in a single pointed absorption of the mind is not being trained, but rather something more similar to how when you're driving, you're not thinking about, in the days where you have manual, gear, you're shifting, right? And your awareness is always panoramic, right? And everything is seamless. Right? You're not thinking about, oh, I need to look left, I need to look right. When you first started driving, that's all like up in the head, right? I need to look left, I need to look right, I need to do this before I turn. And, so you're going through a whole list, right? But when you really get good at driving, and it's one of those days of driving where you're not distracted, right? You're completely present. Yeah. And if something suddenly comes in front of you, you are completely there,
Right.
To brake the car, right? And avoid an accident.
Mm-hmm.
If someone merges, in front, you know when to yield, you know when to speed up. All of that done effortlessly. Yeah. So in developing this more kind of panoramic approach, yeah, certain other muscles are being toned and trained. And ultimately, both types need to be developed and toned and trained. But we have to see, depending on our life situation, are we right now in a very stressful kind of situation that a certain approach is not going to work so well, So you get like a bag of like skills,
Yeah.
Techniques. Yeah. And so your question about, being aware of the surrounding, then you want to kind of, make good use of that,
Mm-hmm.
rather than seeing that as, taking away from your meditation, then, you train in the panoramic kind of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
But you're driving, and you never forget that you're driving.
Right.
So in this case, right, it's the sati that is developed and used to shine onto the body. But everything that is happening, you are aware,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't get distracted.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. That driving metaphor makes a lot of sense to me. Appreciate it.
So we have those skills,
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that, So getting used to, And so that kind of awareness is already present in our driving. And in driving, you're not going to get more out of that simply, oh, that was a nice drive, right? So you use those skills and now apply it here. And what you're going to build here with your contemplative practice is going to be something that will fundamentally kind of shift your internal kind of makeup. It'll have lasting effect. And not just simply, well, that was a nice drive.
Right.
Or that was a good meditation session. Yeah. It can go beyond that. It can actually affect some kind of fundamental switch.
Right. Right. Thank you, Dr. Glady.
Sure. Okay, good. So I think now maybe, we'll get to the topic of the Four Noble Rumors. So we often talk about the Four Noble Truths, the Four Noble Truths. Right? So first of all, the definition of that, a more kind of accurate translation is the truth of the Aryas, the truth of the noble ones. Meaning these four things are what the noble ones have direct access to. They see directly, they perceive directly. So who are these noble beings? Who are these Aryas? Who are these noble beings? These noble beings are those, like as Siddhartha would call them, those with little dust in their eyes. So this kind of later Mahayana expression, the adventitious stains that's staining the Buddha nature, the divine nature, the innate goodness, that, right? There are this situational, conditional, temporary stains. Right? Once you polish that away, when you polish and you polish and you polish, right? The diamond that you are, so to say, right? That's the Aryas. Those are the noble beings. And what do the noble beings see? They see these four truths or these four realities. So the Four Noble Truths is in that sense that they are noble in that they are truths that noble beings see or perceive directly. And these four truths can be divided into basically two, which is dukkha, which is often translated as suffering, and the cessation of this dukkha. In fact, the Buddha said, all my life, for 45 years of my teachings, I basically, everything that I taught, summarized in these two. I teach about dukkha, and I teach about the cessation of dukkha. Because why? Because he himself saw what the problem is and what the solution is. And the problem is our existential problem, the problem that we have is articulated as a problem of dukkha. And is there an end to dukkha? He verified, he says, yes, there's an end to dukkha. Why is there an end to dukkha? Because dukkha isn't like always there. It originated from somewhere. So if it arose somewhere at some point, then whatever arises ceases. There's an end. So from the 2 points elaborated into what's known as the Four Noble Truths. Maybe more like my background growing up as Buddhist, and maybe this doesn't completely apply to the present audience, but I think even that, I think it has crept in, which is that, when we're attracted to the Buddha Dharma, we're attracted to Buddhist practice, then we learn that, there are the Four Noble Truths, right? Dukkha, the origins of dukkha, the cessation of dukkha, and the end of dukkha. Then we think, this is what the Buddha taught, and therefore this is what we profess, or this is what we believe in, right? Because we're so used to the business of religion. Even when we substitute, religion with spirituality, right? For most of us, we're just changing the name. All the baggage of religion is still kind of lurking around back there, right? So if we came from a past with baggage of confessing to these truths or that truths, right? Now we're just substituting it with, now I believe in right? I confess that, existence is dukkha, like that's the first noble truth, right? Grasping or thirsting is the cause of dukkha. The cessation of dukkha is nirvana. And the way to end that is through the Noble Eightfold Path, right? And so we have these things that we kind of walk around like, these are the things that we believe in. Right? But the way the Buddha really talked about these four truths is that he says, these are the four truths that the noble beings have seen. Now, he did not teach the four truths for the benefit of noble beings, because they don't need it anymore. They have seen it directly. Yeah? So he taught this for the benefit of those of us on this side of confusion. So on this side of confusion, if we simply say, oh, yes, these are truths of the noble ones, and somehow I accept or I believe, it's not really what he intended these four. Instead, I say, this kind of started off kind of half jokingly, right? But these are four rumors. And it's good to approach them as the four rumors. And we can say they are the four noble rumors. As in, it has been rumored by the noble ones that bhava, which is translated often as existence or life, which is actually a terrible translation. Life is suffering. Bhava is dukkha, does not translate to life is suffering. Bhava is dukkha, which is the equation there. Bhava, yes, superficially is translated as existence, as life. But see, in common usage of English, when we say life, the opposite of life is death. And so then if we say life is dukkha, then you're like, oh my gosh, this is such a depressing tradition. And if you recognize that, oh gosh, this is such a depressing tradition, then maybe it's still okay, maybe you're like, I'm going to stay away from it. Because I think it's more dangerous if because, you have experienced so much dissatisfaction, and in fact, you've given up, you've become like depressed, you've given up. And then you hear, oh, the Buddha says life is suffering. And then you own it, and say, see, my life is suffering, my life is suffering. And unintentionally, we feed that suffering. But in the first noble truth, the Buddha said, or the Buddha rumored, that there is dukkha. And he did not say, you have dukkha or I have dukkha. He says simply, there is dukkha. And dukkha is a common experience. And that as long as we are under the power of confusion, dukkha is operative. And dukkha means to be in a uncomfortable space. Ka is space. Du is like uncomfortable. And to be in an uncomfortable place. And to find ourselves in the midst of an uncomfortable situation. That's the first noble rumor. We should keep it as a rumor because until we verify this rumor to be true, it has very little power to help us. Example I use is like, like when you finally go, learn mathematics beyond, multiplication and subtraction and things like that, right? When you have to prove like these problem sets, right? It's useless to know what the answer is. It's going through proving the problem set that you will actually get your full, grade for it. So likewise with the Four Noble Truths, it's pretty useless to know, in conclusion, these four things. we have to verify it with our own experience. So they are noble rumors. They are not vicious rumors. They are not fake rumors. So that much faith is necessary. That these are noble rumors. And our job then is to verify these rumors. I think one of the Panchen Lamas wrote this text. He said, this is in relation to something else. In that system, they emphasize a lot on searching for the object of negation. So for example, the phrase non-self or not self. So what is being negated is self, right? So he says, right? So you have to go look for this self. They say, oh, the Buddha says that there's no self, right? No abiding self, no solid self. He says, you cannot just say, oh yeah, right, there's no self, and think, I'm good now, I've stopped believing in a self. He says, you have to look for yourself, like, you own, a yak. So the example you said is you own a yak, or a G, a female yak is called a G. You own a G, and you have lost this G. And this G is what you rely on, the milk and everything to feed your family. So he says, when you have lost a G, you're not just going to look around your house and go, okay, G is gone. Right? It says you will go up and down the valley, up into the mountains, and search and search and search until you have completely exhausted yourself before you will surrender and say, indeed, there is no G. So in the same way, with the Four Noble Truths, the Four Noble Rumors, if we don't actually apply them, it's not going to be very helpful. How do we apply the Four Noble Truths? The other part that I think a lot of times we miss, because we relate to the Four Noble Truths as again, some sort of right, capital T truth that you kind of bow in front. I mean, we don't quite do that, but in many ways we sort of do that because we're I'm a card-carrying Buddhist, or I have signed up for 10 sessions of Buddhist practice. So at least during these 10 sessions, I'm going to subscribe to the Four Noble Truths, right? And that's not how it works. In fact, in relation to the Four Noble Truths, there are 4 verbs that the Buddha gave. This is all found in the first teaching he gave publicly to the 5 monks, called the Turning of the Wheel of Dharma. And he gave these 4 truths, he taught them, and in relation to each of them, there is a verb that he provides. So he says, in relation to the first noble truth, the noble truth of dukkha, he says, realize it, see it, recognize it. See, right now, the main problem is we are experiencing dukkha, but we don't recognize that it's dukkha. We think, must be because I ate something wrong. Must be because I hung out with the wrong person. Even must be because the wrong guy is in the White House. Whatever, right? We don't recognize it as dukkha. But we are going through, we are experiencing dukkha. So the first one, he says, learn to recognize what is dukkha. With the second noble truth, he says, abandon the cause of dukkha. So that's the verb for the second noble rumor. Abandon dukkha. With the third noble truth, the noble truth of cessation, the end of dukkha, he says, experience that. And so what that means is, to me, yes, there is a final state of when all dukkha is gone, never to come back again. That is when, you know, halos come out of your head and all of that, you know. You are Buddha now. But even before that, it's possible to experience the freedom that comes when even dukkha temporarily kind of ceases. How that happens is when we abandon, when we relinquish, at least temporarily, the cause of a particular dukkha, immediately we can feel the experience, the liberation that comes. So in the short term, with the third noble truth of cessation, the verb is experience until the ultimate experience of liberation from all suffering, from all dukkha. Then with the fourth noble truth, the noble truth of the path. A path is just a fancy way of talking about method. Yeah. There, the verb used, very interesting, is develop. Actually, it's not follow. Like, develop the path? What does that mean? Okay, it does not mean this. It does mean, okay, let me go research the internet and put together, you know, a program for myself to free myself from dukkha. Of course, you can do that, but that's not what the Buddha meant when he says develop. He's not saying go out and find and chart your own path. What he is saying is, yes, you learn, right? You learn what he has taught, but what he has taught, whether you learn from books, you learn from teachers, until you kind of develop them within your own experience, until the Tibetan expression for what we translate as practice is Nyamsu Lempa, Nyamlen. Nyamlen literally is to take into one's own experience. So you have to develop that. The path is not like, say, oh, you want to go to Boston, you take this road and everybody gets on that road. That's not how it occurs. In the teachings about the path, it's going to sound like that. As if, you know, it's a non-material spiritual parallel to the road to Boston is this highway, and everyone who gets on it will see the same road signs, will see the same exits, will see the same potholes, and so on and so forth. But the path is not that way. The path unfolds within our own experience as we take the first step. Then depending on our own karmic makeup and situation, it will unfold a particular way. Then you take the next step and it will unfold a certain way. And that's how you develop your path. By applying the teachings, taking into your own experience, and then the path begins to open up, open up, open up, and then you keep going on the path. So that's to develop. So with these four noble rumors, only when we apply these four verbs are they going to arise as the Four Noble Truths. And when they become the Four Noble Truths, that is when we ourselves become the noble beings. Those with little dust in our eye, and finally no dust, and basically free. No longer bound, no longer under the power of confusion. We break free. It's now a good time to see if there are any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Lai. So once again, everyone, you have the ability to unmute yourself. Also, people can write questions into the chat box. Well, I have a question, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
So I really appreciate the way that you're talking about develop the path versus follow the path.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about why it is that some of these, you've pointed to several kind of mistranslations or misunderstandings that have kind of crept in over the years. And I'm wondering why you think these misunderstandings or mistranslations have become so prevalent, and whether there's something about, I don't know, following versus engaging and developing that appeals, or something is easier.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I have some theories. I could speculate. I think in part it has to do with. Okay, so let me first talk about how often I get asked this question, especially when I'm traveling in Central or South America: is Buddhism a religion or a philosophy? I think there are some anxieties over that. And I know what people want me to say. They want me to say it's philosophy. Partly because for some of them, they still have a religion, but it's not necessarily how I think North Americans think about religion. Really, it's more about being part of a family, being part of a culture, being part of a heritage. And so they feel that if Buddhism is a religion, then it's like, I don't know about having two religions. So they want it to be philosophy. And then the other part, wanting it to be philosophy, is more to do with, I'm done with religion. So I don't need religion. I want it to be philosophy. And I said that, well, if you're asking me about Buddha's teachings, Buddha Dharma, then Buddha Dharma is not religion and it's not philosophy. Buddha Dharma is medicine. It's prescription and proscription that the Buddha gave. And basically, it's a form. It's the ultimate like therapy. By the way, please do not replace ordinary therapy with Buddha Dharma. So it's dangerous to just use the word therapy. No. Continue whatever therapy that you're doing, because that's doing something else. Yeah, they're all kind of, leading to, healthier lives and all of that. Yes, but the Buddha Dharma's therapy is to heal us from the ultimate, the kind of distant cause, right? Confusion. So it's not religion, it's not philosophy. However, this Buddha Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, have historically come down to us through primarily religion and secondarily through philosophy. And so especially when it coincides with religion, when it comes down to us as religion, it then also became kind of part of someone's identity, right? Then mainstream society, especially wherever Buddhism is mainstream, will kind of co-opt Buddhism as part of maintaining, right, whatever mainstream society values as what keeps stability to those societies. When in fact, I think the Buddha's, what the Buddha had to say was often very destabilizing, was radical, right? When I was still teaching at the universities and teaching Buddhism, I said to the 18-year-old, 19-year-olds, I said, you guys now think, right? Like becoming a monk or nun is like the most conservative, the most kind of old-fashioned thing to do, right? I said, but what you fail to see is it's like the most ridiculously radical thing to do. By becoming a monk or a nun, you are saying to mainstream society, the very basis of you reproducing this I reject. I mean, how much more radical can you get, right? I'm not going to participate in the very way you biologically reproduce this whole thing. Yeah, so that cutting edge, you know, kind of got absorbed by mainstream society and religion and everything. And so governments find it very comfortable, you know, when Buddhists talk about karma. Now, the Buddha didn't teach karma for it to be used, right, as a way to keep people down, but effectively that has happened. I don't think we should be blind to that, right? And fantasize about, oh, there was this time in Asia, there were some blah, 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 you know, whenever you have governments and religion or Buddha Dharma all mixed up together, then same thing, same old, same old. Yeah. So I think part of it comes from there. The other part, in the translation to the West, a lot of baggage from existing religious traditions gets transferred when we translate. So I often say to the communities that I go to, I said, the greater job of translating the Buddha Dharma is not just a translation of languages. Yeah? It's not just, as important as that is, you know, linguistically translating Buddhist texts from one language to another language. The greater work of translation is what all of us have to do. How to translate like the essence of these teachings into our lives. And that is the lifeblood of the Buddha Dharma that will pass down. And in that sense, then all of us involved in Buddhist practice in the West, right, receiving these traditions from teachers from Asia, or maybe 1 or 2 generations after that, we are all engaged, you know, in this grand project of how do we translate the Buddha Dharma into a language, an expression, a tone, a shade, even a flavor, you know, that is like, that keeps, you know, the integrity of that lifeblood that is flowing down to us. To me, that's also what lineage is about, you know, when Tibetan Buddhists talk about lineage. Yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question, but I'm sticking to what my answer is.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Dr. Lai, have you
Yes.
written any books that include your teachings on Buddhism?
Books. I read a lot of books. There are a lot of good books out there, for sure. I'm trying to think here. I think if you want to kind of get like the Buddhist view kind of clear, the fundamental view, like its basic kind of standpoint in relation to like big questions.
Mm-hmm.
Jongsa Khyentse Rinpoche is What Makes You Not a Buddhist? It's there, you know, it's funny, and you know, aside from that, it's right there, you know, it makes it very clear, you know, what it is and what it is not.
Okay. Great.
But more so, I think, than finding the perfect book is to figure out how to read books. You know, we are, of course, understandably, you know, we are looking for like the perfect book, the perfect tradition, right? And then if you're involved in Tibetan Buddhism, you know, the perfect deity to practice, the perfect whatever, the perfect this, the perfect that, the perfect level, you know, am I Hinayana, am I Vajrayana, this, that, you know. Again, back to the founder of the Drikung Kagyu lineage, he said, not in so many words, but I'll paraphrase what he said. He said, the power that we can derive from any practice doesn't really come from the practice. it comes from whoever is wielding the practice. Yeah? Whoever is wielding, whoever is holding the practice
Mm-hmm.
is the one that is going to decide how effective that practice is. So he says, you might think, oh, there's this thing as Vajrayana practice. But he says, if you don't have, right, that level of holding that practice, you could superficially be doing Vajrayana, but you are only, using it as a Hinayana method.
Okay.
Likewise, seemingly Hinayana methods, if you come with a Vajrayana kind of maturity, then that, gives the result of Vajrayana practice.
Mm-hmm.
It says the one that wields it is what determines it.
Mm.
And this often reminds me of this Confucius, in China. Yeah, he kind of, in the Analects, he makes a statement. He says, people say, the way, like the Tao, right? The way. And he says, people say, the Tao is great, the Tao is great, And he says, we make the Tao great. The Tao itself, he says, the way itself is neither great nor not great.
Mm.
But we will either glorify, so to say, make it great, or debase it.
Right.
So I think slowly, kind of developing a set of skills on how to receive the teachings, how to read books, is what's most helpful, I feel. Yeah, so just keep kind of investigating,
Right.
In the debate tradition in Tibetan Buddhism, it says, don't make the error of under investigating and over deciding.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Lai, for the guided meditation and the Dharma teaching and this discussion.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us for the weekly Dharma gathering, both those here right now and those joining us in the future. Please join us for next week's gathering on Wednesday, September 4th, with David Perrin for a talk titled Don't Drop Me, Story Verse Storyline. You can find out more details at the link that I'm putting into the chat box right now. And for those who are finding this later, you can find it on weeklydharmagathering.com. And make sure to follow us on Instagram at Weekly Dharma and on Facebook at Weekly Dharma Gathering. So once again, thank you everyone for coming. And Dr. Lai, thank you so much for sharing your teachings with us today.
Sure, thank you and have a good night.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lai.
Yes.